Today we're going to take another look at patch 13.11 and see how all the changes impacted our tier list this week. We're not going to hang about and jump straight into the video and start off with the top lane as always. And in the S tier we have Fiora, Jax, Kled, Malphite, Olaf, Ornn, Poppy, Rengar, Riven and Zac. Yes, you heard me correctly, Zac top is kinda slapping at the moment, with his crazy sustain, surprising damage and his amazing gank setup and roaming potential too. Zac is seriously difficult to shove out a lane because he can just clear waves, heal off any trades and deal some juicy damage to his enemies too at the same time. We all know what Zac does throughout games with his long range engage, crowd control and disruption, but when you realise just how strong he can be in the laning phase too, you'll understand why his success rate up here is just so impressive. So if you haven't tried it yet, give it a go. If you do want to find out more about top lane Zac builds and runes, then just click the first link in the description and we'll take care of all of that complicated stuff for you. All you gotta do is download our app and click import to client on the top right, and bam, you're good to go. Renekton's buffs have made more of a difference than we initially thought, and his win rate saw a pretty big increase for the first time in years. Now we're gonna keep Renekton in the B tier for the time being, but it's nice to know that he's actually far more viable now, and you can actually abuse him in the right games with the right team comps and synergies. One of the best strengths of Renekton is his gank setup with those dashes and his point and click CC on his W. So if you're in a pre-made top jungle duo and you're the solo laner, picking this guy will feed you and your jungler so easily if you play topside. If Renekton does get fed, he can 1v2 the top and jungler pretty often and take so much attention and pressure off the rest of the map too. Now although he may not be OP, he's definitely in a much better position, so try him if you haven't already. Rengar top lane is still winning a ridiculous amount of games and this doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon. He takes a bit more practice, but his win rate shows just how absurd he can be in the right hands. The early game damage, his ability to snowball and the ability to 1v9-2 no one can argue with. So you can jump from brush to minion to enemy to brush to jungler and rinse and repeat until you kill your opponents and survive at the same time. Rengar's just in a great spot right now, and in the top lane he's a bit unstoppable, so give him a go. Over to the jungle now then, and in the god tier we have Rek'Sai and Jarvan. In the S tier we have Evelynn, Fiddlesticks, Ivern, Kha'Zix, Kindred, Maokai and Rengar. Amumu's nerfs hit him harder than expected, so he moves down to the B tier. So Rek'Sai has gone from C tier all the way up to the god tier in the space of just one patch, which just shows how insane the buffs actually were for her in 13.11. She fell off the face of the earth when Prowler's Claw lost its dash, but now her Bruiser path and itemization is just so strong and winning a huge amount of games. She's currently got the highest jungle win rate in the game at Plat Plus, and she's not quite as popular as you'd think just yet, so it seems not everyone has really realised just how broken she actually is. Either way though, you should make sure you get on the hype train whilst you still can, because it's absolutely abusable. If you're struggling to find out what to pick against Rek'Sai, then click the link in the description to head to her counter page, where you can see all the stats of all the champions' win rates so you know which picks are best to go for. Ivern was another champion whose buffs sent him straight back into those top jungle tiers, and despite his still relatively low play rate, his win rate is insane. Ivern is a unique utility jungler with a very different playstyle to most, but once you understand how to play it, you quickly understand just how effective and how impactful he can be in a lot of games. He's got CC, he's got disruption, and he works perfectly in those comps where your AD carry like Zeri can use that extra protection. With Rengar being so strong in the top lane too, if you manage to get this duo combo in top and jungle, it's going to be pretty hard not to take the dub, so give it a try. Kindred is also going to shoot back up to the S tier after really bouncing back this patch. Going against a good Kindred is a fairly unique experience, and honestly it can be pretty difficult to beat. You got to balance the normal jungle playstyle and tempo whilst also having to be careful of those marks and making sure Kindred doesn't scale with her passive into an unstoppable hyper carry in the mid to late game. She's got solid mobility, great DPS and an undoubtedly game-changing ultimate that can carry fights, peel for teammates and even help secure objectives. So if you can juggle all of these things, Kindred is one of the best junglers to play in the game right now. Let's take a look into the mid lane now then, and in the god tier we just have Neeko. In the S tier we have Ahri, Akshan, Anivia, Annie, Cassiopeia, Fizz, Pantheon, Talon and Zoe. Azir and Akali keep their places in the B tier after seeing some decent results after their respective buffs last patch. Aurelion Sol though has finally moved down and out of those top tiers with the nerfs that came in last week. Every single time he's been nerfed in the past, it just hasn't made a difference, but this time round he actually saw a pretty big dent in his success rate. Aurelion Sol just offers a brutal amount of DPS and AoE damage throughout games and fights, especially in the late game. But you'll probably be happy to know that this is a little bit less obnoxious now. Aurelion Sol moves down to the A tier, but he is still definitely viable, but nowhere near as turbo broken as he was for so long. Twisted Fate has bounced back with a passion, and full APTF is stomping tons of games now, especially so in high elo. The constant poke, the low cooldown catch potential with the gold cards, the burst damage, and of course the roams and carry potential with that ultimate. TF is a super enjoyable mid lane champion to play, and it's been so long since we've seen him in the meta. He's always been scary because in the right hands and in pro play he can be so hard to deal with, but honestly it's just nice to have him back. He's got a really cool design, a super impactful kit, and although he is fairly simple to learn, his ability to carry games is no joke. Zoe is another terrifying mid lane champion to play at higher ranks now, and this week we've moved her up to the S tier. It can be so confusing trying to outplay all of Zoe's dashes and items and blinks, and that long range terrain sleepy bubble can catch you off guard so often and so easily. Zoe really is all about those picks and bursting enemies down before teamfights can even begin. Catching rotating enemies, roaming, ganking and snowballing is just what she does best. So if that sounds like your jam, you should 100% pick her up. She does take more practice than other mid laners and requires a very quick thinking and dynamic playstyle to pull her off consistently. But if this sounds like your thing, don't miss out. Down to those AD carries now then, and in the S tier we have Ezreal, Jhin, Karthus, Cockmore and Zeri. Jinx moves down to the B tier following her nerfs as they had more of an impact than most first thought, and she'll join Aphelios who moved down last week. Kalista also didn't quite pop off as much as we thought. Zeri though is back to her best again now. People have figured out how to build her and who to play her with, and to be honest, with the right pilot she can be one of the best champions in the game. Zeri just has so much mobility and consistent damage to deal with. She can zip and zap around teamfights, dishing out crazy damage for the entire fight with almost no downtime. And if she's got an enchanter beside her, she can simply be impossible to deal with. Zeri's unique playstyle takes a bit of getting used to, but once you get the hang of it you can 1v9 in so many games. As soon as Zeri hits that level 6, her power spike here is already enough to get the ball rolling, and then with each item completed she just gets more scary. If you aren't playing Zeri, you should probably consider banning it, because the higher ranks you go the harder she is to outplay and to take down. Ezreal is one of those marksmen that can either outplay the entire map on repeat or simply not really do anything, but right now more often than not he's coming out on top. If you aren't a skill shot based player then you should probably not bother, but if you enjoy the constant poke, mobility and burst, Ezreal can be a crazy amount of fun, and if you can pull it off there really isn't that many better options to go for. Ez has always been a champion that so many people play but not enough people play perfectly. However, those Ezreal one tricks are genuinely having the time of their lives recently, from a somewhat safe lane phase to a brutal mid game pass spike with Muramana coming online. Plus, to add to all of this, some of Ezreal's more difficult matchups like Kai'Sa and Vayne just aren't pulling their weight, which means blind picking him has never been easier. So if you are an Ezreal enjoyer and you are good enough to land those Qs consistently, crack on. If you're new to Ezreal, then don't forget we have in-depth combo breakdowns and demonstrations on our website for Ezreal and every other champion, so check that out by clicking the link in the description. The Jinx Nerfs last week have had a bigger impact than we first thought, and she's actually going to move down to the beta this week. Jinx has been dominating the AD carry meta pretty much all season so far, and there hasn't really been many options that can compare to just how good she can be. However, since the nerfs last week, she's found herself averaging just below around 50% win rate, which is the lowest it's been for a long time. With so many better options in the S and the A tiers, it's safe to say there's not as much reason to pick her at the moment. That being said, don't worry if you do main Jinx though, because in the right game she'll always be a threat with her late game damage and carry potential, but you might not be able to just permanently pick her no matter what happens in draft now. Finally, let's move on to those supports, and in the God tier we still have Milio and Janna. In the S tier we have Annie, Blitzcrank, Rakan, Senna, Sona and Thresh. Rell's changes last week ended up hurting her a crazy amount, and she fell to below a 40% win rate after that patch dropped. However, Riot quickly saw this and hotfixed her to buff her since then, and her win rate has steadily been climbing back up, and already is back up to being above 50%. Now, it's really hard to gauge just how good Rell actually is since these changes and then the hotfix buffs, but she does seem in a pretty good spot now. Once people understand how good she can be, she might actually seem a little bit on the OP side, and I guess Riot have acknowledged this because she's actually got some nerfs coming her way next week already in patch 13.12. Rell has so much engage, she has tons of utility and CC, and she can be a complete menace to come up against in the right duos and synergies. So don't sleep on this champion, and if you haven't tried the Rell changes yet, we definitely recommend it. Milio is still one of the best champions in the game, and definitely so when it comes to the support role. It's all about his utility, his shields and heals, and he basically makes any AD carry seem like they're completely broken. His damage over time pokey passive is a big factor in this, and with certain champions who could proc it and abuse it, like Lucian as an example, just demonstrate how potent even this single ability is on its own. Milio is super easy to play too, and just offers a bit too much right now. So let's see how the nerfs that are coming in next week's patch help out. But for now, just keep abusing it while you still can. That's if it's not banned. It is pretty amazing to still see Thresh performing this well so far into the season, and he's maintained a very impressive success rate throughout. Thresh is one of those champions that can achieve so much when being played by someone who really knows what they're doing. From perfect hooks to well-timed plays and those clutch lanterns too. You can feel like a demon when you're playing Thresh well enough. And he's not only super fun to play, but also fun to play alongside as well. He's one of those supports that despite being in a great spot, he doesn't really feel broken to play against because everything is outplayable. That being said, if you are good enough to pull off Thresh consistently, he's a great choice, and this doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon, so enjoy. And that brings us to the end of our patch 13.11 updated tier list video. Don't forget to check out Mobalytics before you go and let us help you out with all the best builds, runes, combos, counters and so much more. So don't miss out. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, take care.